Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over the Grayscale trusts. Let's see, CPI, GameStop earnings, the presidential debate, and also some dividend distributions. So with that being said, let's get it. Okay, so let's start with the most obvious one first, and that would be the presidential election debate. So I watched the entire debate last night. It was, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was 90 minutes. I had to pause along the way. So for me, it was about 2 hours because I was trying to process and understand exactly what was going on here and the direction that things were going. So basically, I'm going to tell you guys right now the short of what I think happened. Okay. I think that Trump was being passionate about his stance, and the Democrats do what they always do. They try to mislabel it or mislead the people into thinking, oh, he's being overreactive or rash or emotional. No, that there's a difference between being emotional and being passionate. There's a very distinct difference. Okay. So I think he's being passionate about his stance. But the gist of what I gathered from the debate last night is that Trump has a very clear path forward as to what he wants to do. He's going to do what he already did in his previous time in the White House, and it was effective. Okay, he's basically going to go with the same old plan, which worked, and I don't see any reason why if it didn't work at first time, it couldn't work a second time. Okay, so the other thing is that there was kind of a 3-on-1 between the moderators and Kamala against Trump, and I think that was unfair. But I think Trump did extremely well in the particular position he was in. At the end of the debate, he asked more or less why Kamala didn't, close the border, why she didn't fix all of her crappy policies. That's, helped in assisting the destruction of the United States, which is not anything that anybody that lives in the U.S. actually wants. And she couldn't answer the question. Okay. But what I will say is that I think Kamala was just making a bunch of stuff up. I think she couldn't answer any real questions. She couldn't defend herself in positions where she was asked hard questions that she knew she had failed on. I saw a similar debate between her and Tulsi a few years ago. Tulsi Gabbard, where basically she was pretty much pinned to a wall by Tulsi and she couldn't defend herself. Look, the mark of a strong leader is the ability to stand in the face of resistance. Okay, and Kamala Harris is just not that guy. I mean, it's a euphemism, but I think that Trump's polls are going to go up after this, and I think that Kamala's are going to plummet, and I still think that Trump is going to win the 2024 election. So that's all I'll say about that. Whether a second debate happens or not, we'll just have to wait and see. So now let's go over the GameStop earnings. So basically, in short, pretty much what happened here is that GameStop earnings, I got to go over here to the charts so you guys can see it. So let's see here. So GameStop had a gap down on the earnings. Unfortunately, it did drop quite a bit. We still have our called debit spreads. Nothing's changed. Again, we're not just taking the earnings into consideration. We're also taking the Fed rate cuts into consideration, because a lot of these stocks probably will pump or start to moon, and crypto will start to moon on the rate cuts. But you guys can see they had a slight miss on revenue, whereas they were actually profitable on the earnings. So it was a mixed report. There was no earnings call from what I was able to see. It would have been nice if Ryan Cohen, the CEO of GameStop, had come out and gave some kind of positive forward guidance and said, hey, look, guys, Fed's getting ready to cut rates. That's bullish for our company, bullish for our stock. That would have pumped the price of the stock, right? But we didn't see nothing like that. So, but you guys got to understand GameStop is a business, okay? GameStop is a business. I mean, it's a gaming retailer, okay? Regardless of whether they choose to acquire a company, merge with a company, become kind of more like Netflix in terms of gaming or something like that, I think is less relevant than the actual Fed rate cuts, because the rate cuts will lead to monetary expansion, which is good for companies that need cheaper borrowing rates like GameStop, like AMC, like a lot of these other stocks, especially small cap stocks like in the Russell 2000 that Tom Lee talks about. Like, I don't know if these are in the Russell 2000, but a lot of these are small caps, SoundHound, Serve, Veritone, even stocks like American Airlines, Snap, and you have some others here like maybe SoFi, So it's a wide range of stocks. It's not just a few. Okay, so I do think that the Fed rate cuts will pump the price of GME, in my opinion. Some people were bullish on it. Some people were bearish on it. You guys can look into these news catalysts in your own time. They did do an at-the-market offering. Again, like I said before, I think the Fed rate cuts will lead to bullishness on the price of GME because, again, yeah, okay, sure, they're offering more shares at the market, but it's a lot less shares than what AMC did. And you guys got to remember, they have to do what they have to do to survive the Fed tightening cycle. Okay, now that the Fed's getting ready to cut rates, if they so choose to do so, they can buy their shares back, which is what? Bullish for the price of the stock. Okay, so that's always a future consideration. So now let's talk about. We'll talk about the dividends here in a minute. So let's talk about the CPI report. So this was quite interesting. The market reaction was definitely not what I expected. Okay, so going here earlier to today, basically core CPI, you guys can see, was as expected. So there's no real change there. The kind of, I suppose, a little bit of a shocker here was, let me see if I can actually find it. So core inflation rate month over month was above expectations. So that may be why the market initially dropped and then popped afterwards. So that would be the bearish case scenario, I suppose, if you could even call it bearish. But the expectations for the headline CPI were 2.6%, down from 2.9. It actually came in at 2.5. So in my opinion, this is actually very bullish. If the headline, like I said before, if the headline inflation had a massive drop, like it dropped down to 2% or 1.8% in one reading from this 2.9, I'd be a little concerned then, because then it would become more of an emergency situation where the Fed has to cut rates, not they are going to cut rates because it's the right time. They have to do it because if they don't, the economy is going to fail. I don't see this as an emergency situation. It's just slightly more bullish than expectations. You can see the market sold off. This 5,500 was a major level of resistance, and then it just absolutely moonshot. A little bit later in the morning, it pretty much just recovered and then gained everything it lost. Okay, so let's talk about the dividend. The dividend distributions from RDTE, which is the new Round Hill Fund, xdte and qdte. RDTE is the Russell one. So they're not going to have their first declaration until the 25th, which gives you guys a lot of time to accumulate if that's something you're bullish on. We pretty much already have our hands full with qdte and xdte, so we're probably not going to take a position in this one, but the declaration did happen for these other two. So qdte 44 cents, 44.5 cents roughly was declared today, and then also xdte was higher than expected, so 33, roughly about 33.5 cents on this one. Okay, so now let's actually go into the Grayscale trusts. So we did see some green here. That's good. That's always good. What I'll tell you guys is the same thing I've told you before. Okay, look, when the Fed cuts rates, that's when I expect the crypto market to start moonshotting again, right around that October to December timeframe. And again, the Fed's going to cut rates this month. And I think likely BCHG and LTCN are going to moonshot between October to December, maybe January. And then we see a rolling off into the ETH products moonshotting. And then kind of Q1, Q2 of next year, the rest of these Grayscale trusts, if they're in sync with the native markets, will moonshot right around the time of the alt season. Okay, so LTCN, we don't have a clear direction here yet, so you can either look at this 1150 level, 1150 somewhere as support, or you can look at $6.50 to $8 if you're more bearish. Depends on your stance. Again, we still have 2 days to close to confirm one way or the other. Swing high up here is the first target, so $54. Of course, you guys can go back and look at the resistance targets. I was going to cover them today, but I actually don't have time, so it's going to have to wait to the next video. But bull case scenario here, the white line holds. You're looking at roughly about 373% gain. Bear case scenario drops to support 630% gain. BCHG, kind of similar story here. It is above the support and the trend line, but again, we don't have a close on the weekly. Based on the market's reaction to CPI and the fact that it recovered everything it lost during the session, and even native crypto actually had a pretty major swing back to the upside. If I go over here to the daily time frame, you'll see what I'm talking about. So basically this thing was down and then it went straight back up. So we're pretty much almost forming a hammer candle here. If the trend continues up for the rest of the week, based on the fact that the momentum was so bullish, I do expect BCHG to close above that level there. But we'll just have to wait and see on that one. So it could actually close above these two levels. It's possible. Okay. So current level 530 to 580, bull case scenario, bear case scenario 370 to about 410. And then the ultimate swing high up here, $24. Of course, there's prices above and beyond that. We'll talk about that in the Fibonacci retracement video. So bull case 306, bear case here roughly about 487. HZEN, so falling wedge, target is the top of the wedge. There's a high probability that this bullish pattern plays out bullishly like it's supposed to. So 1050, support 260 to about 310 there. So this would be about a 292% move. ETCG, so this thing is below support. If it goes really bullish and closes above the top of this zone, I would say this is going to hold a support. If not, I'd be looking for maybe some kind of pullback on this one. Again, ETH and altcoins are probably going to bleed against Bitcoin until Bitcoin makes its next major all-time high, somewhere between maybe 120 to 250,000. It's a wide range, I know, but generally Ethereum doesn't really start hitting all-time highs until Bitcoin's already topped out. So bull case scenario, maybe it holds around this green zone, which is again $8.50 to about $10. Bear case scenario, $3 to $5.10. I don't know that it goes that low, but maybe it stops at this wick down here at about the $7 area. Target up here at just shy of $20, so roughly about 19.5. So bull case scenario, 127%. Bear case scenario, assuming it just stops at the top of this range, roughly about 285% move. Okay, ETH, so I'm looking at the white line as support. We did get a double bottom off of this, so one bounce, two bounces. That's usually pretty bullish. There's also the possibility for a W pattern forming here. That may or may not happen. That kind of just remains to be seen. But regardless, bull case scenario, if it bounces off the white line, let's say we go up to these candle highs up here, it's 92%. This white line up here is the cup and handle target, so that's roughly about $47. We'd be looking at 151% move on that, is what I would be looking at as of right now. I don't think it's going to come down to the support down here, but we'll just have to wait and see how the markets react to the Fed cut. I think, in my opinion, likely it's probably going to be a bullish event. I think markets are going to rip on the announcement of the Fed cut. So PhilG, roughly about, I'd say, well, I usually call this one about 37 to 40, but you guys can go with 35 to 42 if you want to. So that's bull case scenario. Bear case scenario, it comes down to this 450 to 1280. And the highs up here, roughly about $400. So bull case scenario, if this current resistance holds as support, 907% move. And bear case scenario, if it drops lower, then we'd be looking at about 4,200%. GBAT, so this thing is still holding in support. That's always a good sign. It has had a little pop here, so that shows that there are some buyers willing to commit down here at the bottom of the support zone. So 430 to 515 in the bull case. Bear case, it drops down to the white line, which is about 240. And then the highs up there at $32 per share. So bull case scenario, we're looking at roughly about 515%. Bear case scenario, this then becomes 1,200%. And if you're worried that it's going to drop lower, you could always, again, not financial advice, you could always just put some cash on the side and DCA down, or position in slowly as the price continues to drop to these support levels, if it does. There's no guarantee it does. So GLIV support here, roughly about, I'd say 1150 to 1530. The all-time highs up there at 80. The move here would be roughly about 505%. G-Link, so this thing has had a nice little bounce off support. I suspect it's probably going to hold, so 40 to about 46 at that support, and then 220 all the way up there at the highs. assuming we get a retest of support, which could happen because, again, altcoins aren't really going to move until Bitcoin tops out and Bitcoin dominance falls off a cliff. So 396% move here. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that altcoins may not go up. That you just may not see. They could go up, okay, as Bitcoin's going up, but they're not going to get like that Super Bowl move, mega explosive move like 10, 20, 50, 100x until Bitcoin tops out and the dominance falls off a cliff. That's kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen. So GSOL, nice big bounce here. It did hold the EMAs. Whether it continues to do so or not, that remains to be seen. I'll just simply say that I think that this support likely is going to hold. No guarantees, but 300 to 360 is support currently. 580 would be the all-time high up there. So assuming maybe some kind of retest of the bottom, 95% move. And again, that's not out of the question because this thing is hitting its head right against the top of this former support, now return resistance. GXLM. So it looks like we may or may not hit this white line. Again, the white line is I'm looking at as support. My target up here would be $70. Of course, there are levels in between this. You guys can take profit whenever you want to. 341% move here. Mana, this thing's just kind of sitting, not really doing much. Again, I think the markets are, we're in bearish seasonality. We just had CPI. We're going into earnings season towards the end of the year, and the Fed. The market's still waiting to see what the Fed's going to do. They're given an extremely high probability right now of a 25 basis point cut, which again I think is likely. And the reason I said this, like I said before, is because the Fed is going to want to test the waters to see how the data comes in after a 25 BP point cut to decide how they're going to proceed further. I hate using the word data dependent. Maybe they'll be data dependent, but I think what they're probably going to do in this case is they're going to adjust to the market and the economy's needs, but they're going to try to be slightly ahead of the curve. Would be my guess is what they're going to do. So mana here, white line is what I'm looking at for support, 1025. If it doesn't hold, maybe it bounces off of this 560 wick here, or worst case scenario, if you're extremely bearish, 160 to 340 down there at that macro support, and then the all-time high up there at 70. So if it does kind of stay around this white line and then rip from that point, 536, worst case scenario, it gets down to support and then rips all the way up to the all-time highs. And again, this is just a measured move to the all-time highs. This does not include price discovery, 1,860% move. Zcash still kind of bobbing around. Again, I kind of see this as accumulation. It's pretty much doing the same thing it did back here, in my opinion. I'd be looking at the white line as a buy zone, so 315. You could theoretically look at anything between 315 to as high as 510 as a particular buy area, because again, if this is just going sideways, it could be considered to be accumulation before eventually rip into the moon. And then the previous swing high up here is at roughly 10.25. So from that white line to the previous swing high, roughly about 225%. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.